Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we are going to be discussing employee experience, taking a page from the Customer Experience Playbook. My name is Siobhan Fagan. I am the Managing Editor of CMSWire, and I am very happy to be moderating today's webinar. Right now, we are in the midst of introductions. That'll take 5 minutes, give or take. And then following that, we're going to have our main event. That is a presentation from 2 different speakers, and that will take about 20 minutes, give or take. Following that, we would love to hear from you, our audience. So at any point during this webinar, please use the Q&A module at the bottom left of your browser to put in any questions you have for either of the speakers or both of the speakers. You'll also find some colorful widgets at the bottom of your browser, which can help you out with resources, including technical support. Oops. Trigger finger went a little too fast there. So first up, a little bit about CMSWire. It was founded in 2003, and it publishes a wide variety of contributors. We cover topics including digital customer experience, the digital workplace, and information management. And we hold a number of monthly events, including tweet jams, hangouts, webinars like this. A little bit about today's sponsor. Workgrid's digital employee experience platform is built to simplify the workday for employees by integrating with the core enterprise systems employees use each day, intelligently aggregating personalized and contextual tasks, approvals, critical information, and more, all into a unified experience. And you can learn more at the website on your screen. Once again, I am Siobhan Fagan. I'm the Managing Editor of CMSWire, and our 2 speakers today will be hearing from Janine Markey. She is the Head of Marketing for Workgrid Software, and we'll also be hearing from Erika Heald. She is a marketing consultant. You can learn more about both of them in the speaker information widget on the left. And right now, I'm going to pass it off to Janine. Take it away, Janine.
Great. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Let's dive in with talking about the experience disconnect. I think we all are aware that there is a huge disconnect between the experiences we have in our consumer lives and at work. And so let's start by looking at the customer experience. It's something every brand invests in. In fact, it's usually a key differentiator for companies as consumers frequently choose experience above all factors, even price. And it seems it is the main battleground for earning today's business. As a consumer, you may not realize all the work that actually goes into creating great customer experiences, but it actually requires intense data analysis to understand buyers with customer journeys, often spanning 4+ months and over 3+ touch points. And marketers rely heavily on employee journey maps to ensure that every step of the consumer experience is optimized to provide value for the customer, and to move them down the funnel, removing any friction points along the way, as well as adding delighters along the way. And it's no surprise that technology today plays a huge asset in this process, helping companies execute flawlessly to ensure an optimal customer experience across a range of devices. And on the flip side, when you look at the employee experience, the technology that is utilized is often built only with the power user in mind or the company in mind, but not the actual experience for employees at a holistic level. Organizations, they don't do this intentionally, right? But what is happening is, as we are continuing to build out our digital transformations, we're adding more and more technology to our ecosystems, but we're doing so in a siloed manner. You may have HR rolling out new solutions to suit HR-specific needs, finance rolling out new software to meet finance-related needs, and separate systems for learning management, expense management, travel management, and so on across different business functions, really resulting in a Frankenstein-like disjointed experience for the employees. And this leads to an all too common poor employee experience, which results in 70% of workers entering the same data into multiple systems, employees using on average 11 systems needed to do their jobs, and resulting in one day each week spent just on irrelevant emails. If you've ever had to update maybe your address at work, you're probably familiar with this experience of updating the same data into multiple systems. It's kind of frustrating, to say the least. And it's, it's the total opposite from our consumer lives. We'd never continue to do business with a company if they made us use various systems to order something. Imagine buying a pair of sneakers and you had to go through 3 separate websites, then maybe your email, and then have to confirm everything via phone call. I know you couldn't pay me to do that, but at work we pay our employees to essentially waste their time. And so it's clear that the employee experience is valuable, but how valuable, you may wonder? Well, according to various studies, organizations that focus on employee experience have unlocked 22% higher engagement than organizations with less compelling workforce experiences, a 4 times greater likelihood that team members will stay in their jobs, 12% greater customer satisfaction, and more than 2x higher revenue growth rate over a span of 3 years. So you may be wondering, how can you achieve these types of results? And one of the key things is applying marketing best practices, just as marketers do when designing customer experiences. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Erika to kick things off and to walk us through some key marketing strategies that you can implement.
Thanks so much, Janine. So as somebody who does marketing for a living and who has spent a lot of time in the enterprise working with HR technology, working with lots of different kinds of employee comms, the most important marketing tool that you can put to use immediately, from my perspective, is personas. Typically, we think of our team as a big homogeneous glob, but realistically, if you're viewing them that way and you're doing one-size-fits-all communications, you're really not giving it your best opportunity to engage with them and to be able to provide the kind of technology experience that they need at work. Instead, think like a marketer. A marketer doesn't have just one generic customer persona. You usually have a few different personas that reflect the different needs and experiences that those customers have with your company. And the same is true for your employees. Further, your different employees and these different personas rely upon each other to do their tasks, which means that we have to find ways to help them through technology actually work better together in a way that everyone is still comfortable with. So that's why it's important to document those personas in order to understand the current needs and aspirations of your team and to see where there are some areas of friction. For example, every time I've worked with an IT team, they've wanted me to use a technology ticketing system I will not name that, let me assure you, from a marketer standpoint, is horrible. It doesn't have the kind of UI or functionality we're used to. We have to log into some other site with 3 layers of verification. It is not a great experience. So what happens? The marketing team tries to work around IT. So understanding these kinds of things is so important when you're trying to understand how you can improve your employee experience. So with that in mind, some areas to explore or consider when developing your list of key important personas to flesh out, those can include job functions, office location, demographic information relevant for the services you provide, or accommodations that you can make. For instance, newer team members may need access to different resources than more seasoned team members. Or you can have some workers who are always in the field or work from a remote office. And of course, some of your employees are going to fall under multiple personas. So what personas should you consider? Well, in my experience, 6 really important personas to consider in many organizations would be these 6 here. So marketing and inside sales, engineers, field or retail sales, headquarters professional staff and desk-based employees, remote workers, and managers. So to kind of dive in a little bit to give you the reasons why these are 6 really big personas that most organizations should consider fleshing out separately, let's start with marketing and inside sales. They work directly with your customer prospects and the public, and these teams have a pulse on how your company is performing in the public eye, but only if they can actually access everything that is available to the public. For example, many financial services companies block access to using the internet. Can you imagine trying to be a marketer or a sales professional and not being able to use any kind of social media channels, only being restricted to your company sandbox? That sounds pretty silly, but it happens. For engineers, they have a huge workload pressure, usually working on, dozens of projects at the same time. And they often end up in a situation where they work really hard on a project that was a top priority, but then because of some sort of change at the corporate level, it can be completely scrapped, and they have to start on the next priority. So they have a really unique frustration and reliance upon project management tools and communication tools that your other personas may not actually face. They also prefer to communicate in a different way. They're not going to pick up the phone to talk to that person in marketing. They're going to reject that ticket inside of the ticketing tool if there's something wrong with it. So think about things like this when you're mapping out your journey for your engineers. Now, for field or retail sales, the way these team members access information is pretty different than your other team members. They use on-the-go tools and resources such as mobile phones, iPads, or maybe even a kind of workplace touchscreen monitor, and they're going to want information in bite-sized pieces, because guess what? They're not going to take time on their lunch hour break to read a spec sheet or to go through a long video. That's not what they're going to do, because they're not sitting at a desk. They've got a lot of other things to do in the field, so you've got to hit them really quickly with information that hits the main points. Now, when you're speaking about your headquarters professional staff or other folks who have a traditional desk-based job, they're the closest to your company, and they have the opportunity to engage in more in-person activities. And so when you're thinking about that, that really does set a precedent for how you approach the employee moments that matter, because they can actually be there in person. And if you're doing everything just remotely, it can kind of take away from that innate advantage and opportunity you have with those employees. So remote employees, on the other hand, they need to access all your technology off-site, and they're almost never going to be able to attend your live events or meetings. Additionally, they might need access to a unique set of resources depending upon where they're based, and there could even be unique language considerations if they're international. Now, I don't know about you, but I've worked in companies where the U.S. office has been the international office, and some of the things that can happen is you get that email that talks about the really awesome, champagne and cupcakes because of closing that big deal that are in the break room. Only the break room is in the UK, and so you're not getting any of those. And it's kind of a bummer, right? So thinking through how can you segment and think about these different employee sets to make sure that you're giving everybody a fantastic experience without leaving some people out. And last but not least, managers. Not only do your managers have personal development needs that are unique in order to ensure that you have a really great team experience, they are responsible for overseeing team members that come to them as a resource for information. So think about all of these different people within your organization, and you may even have some additional personas to consider. But talk to them and find out about how they access and distribute information, the tools that they use, and all of that. And the way you're going to do that is by auditing your employee experience. So with your personas in mind, it's time to collect some data on your employee experience. So first, the most obvious thing to do is to leverage the current channels and data that you have through kind of more passive monitoring tactics. So look at your turnover rate, your company intranet activities, how long it takes to complete tasks if you have the technology metrics enabled to monitor this. Look at the number of tickets submitted to HR, to IT, et cetera. How long does it take for those tickets to actually get completed? What are things that people are commonly asking for or questions being asked on employee forums? For example, you may find that your marketing people are spending a lot of time talking to your help desk in order to gain access to different abilities or levels of administration than other folks because they need to have a higher access level in order to do something such as to run a screen capture. So really, look at the data that you already have and then use that in order to have some more proactive conversations. So some proactive avenues is to take that data and then use it to do some quarterly employee surveying to gauge experience. This will help establish a healthy dialogue between your managers and the team, and also help you identify some really engaged employee advocates that are the right people to do a more in-depth interview with to start mapping your individual employee experiences. I also like to do some day-in-the-life shadowing, where you actually literally shadow an employee in one of these roles and understand and take notes on all the different touch points the company and its technology has with that employee, and how difficult those touch points were for them to get through, how easy they were. But let's be clear, usually there's something difficult and you're going to notice it. They may not even notice it, but when you're sitting there and shadowing someone, you'll see that somebody has to go in and out of 3 different programs in order to achieve a task, where they may be so used to it that they don't even notice it. So that's why I really like shadowing, because you get to be that fly on the wall and really get to see what's going on there. And when you're also looking for feedback, when you're doing that kind of shadowing, you can ask them questions like, what do they like about this experience that they're having right now? Where can we improve? What are the teams that you often interact with? So although you can do some of this stuff in your one-on-one meetings with employee advocates and include it in the employee survey, I also really like to do that during the shadowing experience, because you get that more real-time interaction. Step 3 is documenting your employee journeys. So now that you've actually looked at your data, you understand which personas really do have a different journey and need to have that map, this is where you're going to actually take that data and create your employee journey maps. What you're going to do here is then also identify the key employee moments that matter and the primary HR touchpoints and company touchpoints that your typical employee is going to have over the course of their relationship with your company. And guess what? That doesn't just start with onboarding. It starts with recruiting. So before somebody even decides to come on board, that is one of the employee lifecycle touchpoints. There are things that happen in the recruiting process that 100% impact the way that they view your company and their expectations coming to the job. Then, of course, there's the onboarding, how well you get them ready for the job. Mid-career, how you help people figure out their career path and really hone their skills, so that way they can either decide to stay in that independent contributor role or be ready for a promotion. And then, of course, there are life changes, such as getting married, getting divorced, having a baby. All of those kinds of changes are HR touchpoints, company touchpoints that are really important to include into that journey and make sure that they have a great experience. And then don't forget offboarding, because if you do a really good job of managing that process, you could be in a situation of actually welcoming people back later after they've had more experiences. And I know it sounds a little crazy that people would want to come back to a company after they've left, but I've actually worked at one Fortune 500 company that had a very, very good offboarding program, which meant that they frequently were rehiring from their pool of existing employees, which is pretty great, right? Get all of that knowledge back, plus some. So when you're looking at all of these changes, make sure that you capture the emotions in each step. Are they excited? Do they have anxiety? What are those things that they're feeling, and how can you support them? Now, you're probably wanting to know, what should this map look like? I don't think there's any one-size-fits-all, but I think that you can learn a lot by looking at how other companies have approached both their employee journey mapping, such as this example from UXpressia, which is a really simple, clean look. You can make this in PowerPoint. You can make this in Excel. You don't need to have some sort of really fancy way of approaching it. This is pretty simple, right? So let's look at things like this. We also have an example. I think I just skipped a slide. There we go. This one is adorable, right? I love this. This one from Davidson does a great job of identifying those key moments that matter and the emotions that this persona is experiencing. So I think this is, such a beautiful way to capture the employee journey. And then this is really more of your super in-depth customer journey map. The reason I wanted to share this is it really does a good job of showing how various factors impact the journey and quantifies the duration of the various stages. So if you find that you have a long tenured workforce, you might want to use something that's a little bit more of a heavy lift like this to help you really understand what that journey looks like over a longer period of time. This B2B international journey, it's going to be hard to read. I promise when you can actually look at the slides and look at this better or go directly to the URL, it's a lot easier to read. But this is really a fantastic journey because it's very visually engaging and it has the risk associated with certain stages. Depending upon your journey, you might replace that with some other qualitative measure. But I like the fact that they think about what are some of the risks? Where could people drop out? Especially when you're thinking about hard to replace employees, that might be a place to put some of those friction points that you've identified during your shadowing process. And then last but not least here, we have this digital.gov example of a journey map. And this is neat because it ties the activities directly to emotions and incorporates the key technologies at each stage. And it includes offline activities such as a referral from a conversation with a friend, which is a really good reminder about the fact that although we're focusing a lot on technology, because frequently the way that employees engage with the company is through technology, it is also really important to think through those things that happen offline because there's a lot of that happening too. So don't get stuck on only picking those things that are the easy to measure technology touch points. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Janine for step 4 to talk about how we actually do use that technology to make the technology work better for you and your employees. Janine, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Erika. I really enjoyed those insights, and I really liked the different persona examples you shared and the journey examples you provided. And one of the points you mentioned that I think is really, really important, and it's often overlooked by organizations, is that when you're looking at your employee journey maps, you really want to consider employee journeys outside of your standard HR use cases. I think a lot of organizations, when they think about employee journey mapping, they start with those HR use cases, but you really want to look at those moments that impact employees from a day-to-day perspective. And to do that too, as well, what you want to do is avoid focusing on employee journeys that are very specific or narrow problem statements that may only be unique for one department. Instead, assess employee journeys from the employee's perspective, right? We as employees, our journey spans across functions and departments. And so employees should have a consistent and seamless experience across all those journeys. And you also want to ensure you're considering employees' intent and their context. And I know, Erika, you talked about the 6 different types of personas to consider. And this is where persona mapping is so important because different employee personas across your organization may have different journeys based on what the action is, right? You have remote workers, you have in-office workers, you have field workers, you have workers that are, travel and are in the office. And so depending on what it is they're trying to achieve, especially when you look at those day-to-day activities, it could be different for them. And sometimes that one employee may have to experience both of those experiences. So it's important to ensure you think beyond the system of record. So if you're looking at what does it look like for the employee to book a day off from work or expense management, don't look at what the expense management experience looks like from the source system. Look at the journey, take a step back, and what is the user's outcome? What are they trying to achieve? And this is important because many times it actually will require multiple steps across multiple systems. And so I think if you complete the work of mapping out your personas and your employee journeys across functions, then you will truly position yourself to understand your users, the systems they use, how they use those systems, how many steps it takes, and how the experience may actually differ by persona. And, I think a brand that does a great job of leveraging intent and context is Google. And so what I want to do is take a quick look at an example from Google. And so Google has really evolved their search results and how they provide search results to users over the last couple of years. And you probably all noticed this. And so let's say I do a search for Morton Steakhouse restaurant. So my intent could be various things if I search for Morton Steakhouse. I may want to reserve a table. I may want to just look up their phone number. I may want directions, or maybe I want to read reviews. And so what's great today is Google's the kind of main purpose, right? They want to satisfy a user's intent. So Google aggregates data together for me in a simple, streamlined, and unified experience in this example. And so Google actually calls these knowledge cards, and so usually they're presented on the right-hand side of your search engine result page. And previously, years ago, if I wanted to see all these snippets of information, I would have to go to Morton's website to see their hours, then load up Yelp to read reviews, then go to maybe OpenTable to book a reservation. It would be a much longer process than having all this functionality and data brought together in one place. And so what's great, too, is Google also knows my context, right? There's over 70 Morton Steakhouses across the U.S., but Google is presenting me with information from the closest location, making that assumption that based on my context that I want to go to the Boston location. And this type of experience isn't something that only has to exist in our personal lives. So in the enterprise, having many disparate systems doesn't have to mean that Frankenstein-like front-end user experience. Technology is available today to make it possible to create what we call at Workgrid an employee experience layer that actually orchestrates across systems to provide employees a seamless digital experience, focusing on the employee's intended outcome, just as Google is doing here. So let's take a look at what I mean. So let's use the example of an employee needing to book time off. That's something all employees have to do. So sometimes it may take multiple steps across multiple systems, but what if you could bring all the steps together into one experience without the employee having to access those disparate systems or even know what they are? And what if the experience was the same across your different personas and different employees? Imagine a simple, intuitive experience where employees enter their time off, add their out of the office message, and check a button to have their calendar updated. Then the system could orchestrate across the back-end systems all on the employee's behalf. And we talked about the different types of employees. Maybe on the back end, if your employee is a full-time employee, Workday would be updated, for example. And if you had a contractor, maybe Fieldglass would be updated, for example. But the experience is the same for the employee, regardless of their context. And this is the type of experience we're used to in our personal lives. It's very similar. I'm sure many of you have booked flights using your mobile device. So maybe you have a Delta app or a Southwest mobile app. There's probably dozens of systems in the background, but we're completely abstracted from this. And so I think if you look at these steps, you'll be ready to thrive as a future-ready company and put yourself above your competitors. And, I know no transformation process is simple, right? But by completing steps 1 through 4, you're definitely on your way to creating an experience for employees that allows them and your business to thrive. It's also important to understand it's an ongoing process, one that will involve constant process of improvement, reviewing those journeys, reviewing those personas, shadowing your employees, making sure you're getting feedback, conducting surveys, and iterating with constant feedback loops. Additionally, my advice would be to include your employees. Create a truly bottom-up approach. You may be surprised about what moments really matter most to your employees. And so with that, I want to thank everyone for their time, and I hope you found this webinar beneficial. And I'm going to now hand it over to Siobhan so we can do some questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Janine. I really enjoyed both of your presentations. It's a lot of food for thought. So we are running up hard on time, so we're going to get to one question. But if you have asked any questions for Erika or Janine, we are going to try and follow up with you after the fact. So thank you all for your inquiries. And Janine, I'm just going to dive right in here. Question for you is, what are the questions we should ask employees in our surveying to build a useful employee journey map?
Great question. So I think some of the questions that you should ask employees is, actually put them in the driving seat. Ask them how they would want to re-envision the experience, not based on what they know is possible, but what would the ultimate experience actually look like or feel like for them. And ask them what frustrates them. Ask them how they feel when they have to do the process. And it really isn't just about questions, right? I know Erika mentioned you want to actually shadow employees. So sit down and watch how they go through different systems, what steps they have to take. Not only can you then efficiently track those journeys, but you can also kind of observe emotions and how employees are feeling. Are they, getting frustrated when they have to click something so many times? Or are they doing things in ways that other employees aren't? Do they think that, do they not understand maybe the UX, or they're using it in a different way?
Excellent. So thank you so much again for that, Janine, and thank you, Erika. This webinar has been recorded, so a link to the on-demand video will be sent to all of you, our audience, in the next few business days. I also want to thank Workgrid for sponsoring today's event, and please keep the conversation going. We have some Twitter handles in the previous slide, so we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us anytime, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.